Hello everyone and welcome back to Neverland. I know I might put a community post about this, but this video has been kind of delayed because, as the post said, we're packing and moving. We're in the process of moving to a new house. We closed on that last week, so hopefully here in 2-3 weeks we'll be moving in, and this will probably be the only video before we're done doing that. Today, I want to talk about another one of the little Did You Know videos. I want to talk about integration, and something I use the term fusion for the end of that, because it's a topic that's kind of scary at first, especially for a system who's never heard anything about it, and what the misconceptions of it are. And it's a little bit deeper than most people tend to think. So I hope I can maybe clear up a little bit of confusion about this and kind of give you a sense of what it means and what it's like for a system to have to go through this. So first, I'll talk about why this is necessary. As you know from my longer video, if you've seen it, or Multiplicity Me's really wonderful video that I referenced a couple times now, integration is necessary because that's how the brain normally functions. When you're born as an infant, your brain is somewhat segmented already. You're kind of needs driven. You know, you're hungry, you're tired, you're scared. So all these little pieces kind of function as you need them to, but it's not really a cohesive sense of personality yourself yet. In that process, as you start getting older, these things start getting more mature, more developed, and they slowly come together into the process that makes you who you are. Sometime around 8 or 9 years old, typically maybe 10, this is pretty much done, and most research tends to suggest that after this point, dissociation to the point of causing, separation, the way DID has it, can't happen anymore. There's some that debate that, but most research tends to suggest that. And this kind of stands what we see. We see children up until that point are really defined. As toddlers use the terrible twos. People say toddlers are schizophrenic. They snap on just one by one to one emotion extreme to the next, to the next, to the next. That's because these things are very independent and they seem very dramatically different. It's because they are. That's what the leading theory says. And then somewhere around the time they're getting around school age, they're really identifying with who they are among their family. And then, of course, by 9, 10 years old or so, that's when this cohesive sense of self will start to form, and that's when you start processing who you are among your peers. That's when kids start having best friends for the first time and start getting closer and identifying who they are among other people outside of their family group. That process continues as they get older, and this cohesion matures and defines itself more. Later into teenage years, they start moving away from parents entirely and family group more, leading more towards their social structure at school, their friends, and then that's where the teenage independence comes in, that fight comes through. And of course, young adulthood, that's more or less defined. That's kind of where the fine-tuning happens to finish your adult self, who you are. So what happens with trauma, however, if it happens early enough, it can cause this not to happen. It can cause, where one part of the brain decides, I can't handle this, and stuffs this little secret away. Well, whatever part was handling that is now cut off from the rest. And the brain learns to cope with this by doing over and over and over. So what you end up with is a whole bunch of pieces. I think Jess Multiplicity used an orange. That was a great example. That can't fuse together and be a whole orange. They're just the slices inside it. All inside one peel, one body, one person. And the way you recover from this is what you process with what we call integration. And I describe integration as kind of a spectrum, just like DID or dissociation is. The very beginning, or the very far, this end for you guys, end of it would be things like not knowing at all and having complete isolation of all the parts. That's how we existed for a long time. It wasn't until a few years ago that we were even aware we were dissociative. All the people who lived inside, Pixie, Angel, and all them, to name a few of them, all lived inside, all thought they were their own person. The inner world was the world. They happened to live near each other because they had some better connection subconsciously than I did. I was completely unaware of them for most of my life, only until about a decade or so ago that I met them online. And that started breaking down. I've talked about that in another video, so I'm not going to go into a lot of that. But what happens is once this awareness, that's the very extreme one end of it. The extreme other end, and I've seen systems who've done this, is full integration, where all the parts are singular-like. They all act and operate very much like any other singleton or singlet, is the terms I've seen online for people without DID. It basically operates the same way as any other person who didn't have trauma would operate. All the parts are co-equally aware, they all have input, and the barriers between is so minimal that they function as if one person. That's the extreme at one end. And I call that fusion, and we'll get to that in a minute about why I call it differently, because it does make it a little less confusing as the nutshell. But so on the one end, you can have not knowing at all, and the way you get together to get to the far at the other end is that you have to start somewhere with communication. That's pretty much where it starts. You have to start communicating with each other. And what you do is you start getting these processes, you start getting the system to talk to each other. We use a journal, we write a lot. A couple of us, one of us draws, and a couple of us post those online and talk about things together. We have a few places online where we can communicate together, where people amongst friends who outside of our system who know who we are and what's going on, and that helps a lot. But the process is essentially breaking these barriers down, and you start with little things. For when I first started the journal, I didn't know what was going on yet, and I started writing because I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. And I knew I had a whole month before I talked to the doctors the first time, and I wanted to document, as it were, everything I could think of that was going on and causing these problems. So I started writing, and then I went back to read things, getting ready for the doctorate, and I noticed there was handwriting I didn't recognize, which isn't necessarily unusual. I've seen lots of my writings from decades ago that don't do this too. Things that were written down that I don't remember writing school notes that were hard to read because the handwriting was terrible and wasn't mine. So that didn't necessarily surprise me, but some of the things being talked about did. There was some level of awareness, but it was very different or very remote or perceived very differently. And that was because of these barriers of dissociation between me and what had turned out to be Pixie at first, and then later some of the others. Now several of us write in the journal fairly regularly. But the process essentially, once we start breaking these barriers down, now it's somewhere I remember I mentioned in the book before I was keeping time things. I've quit doing that. There's no time thing over the end of our book anymore because it was very divisive. And what it was causing, what originally was trying to do was trying to see how often others came out for the purpose of seeing how much more cohesive action we were getting. That was one of the first goals from the very beginning, is to try to get more functional connection between everybody. So I started keeping track of time. And at first it was like 15, 20 hours that I was aware of. There was actually quite a bit more. Pixie noted at one time it was probably close to double that. I just wasn't aware of it. And that was part of it too, is having to be more aware of our system. So what I've been doing is writing these things and trying to get everyone involved. More of us have been writing. We found little things that others like to do. We try to encourage. I got an art pad and some color pencils for Angel to draw. We've found, things on Netflix for other people to watch. I found little things that mean something to somebody to try to help make them more comfortable. And on our Spotify list, we all have a subfolder. We can all create our own playlist and things. I mean, on our phone, well, Pixie was out lately, we can change the wallpaper so let each other know who was out. Little things, that one there's kind of hard to see in there. It's a little, one of Pixie's favorite, that went away. A little emo Tinkerbell. That's one of her favorites. But essentially what we're trying to do is get more communication and work together more and more. Camera focus. There it goes, it's starting to. I should have put the phone too close, sorry. But the process essentially is that it's working towards the more functional awareness together, cohesively. And what we do is we take these little steps of communication, we take one step further with it. Then we start trying to write with each other. We try to get more co-aware. Pixie can comment on things I'm doing and saying. She can see things. She's very aware. She's much of a protector role, so she's more aware than the rest of us are. When she's out, I have no idea what's going on. That's one of the things we're trying to work on. There's been a handful of times, because of this process getting closer and closer, I have been aware of what they're doing, just had no input on it. If you remember my car analogy, this would be akin to sitting in the back seat. I can see, but I have no interaction with the person in front. Like a limo driver, I think is the example I used. So what does this process look like when it's done? You start off with nothing, slowly work towards barely any communication at all, barely aware of each other, to having fairly good communication, being aware of each other, to slowly pressing towards that process where you start being able to be backseat, moving towards the front seat, where you can start being aware of things and communicate while things are happening. That is a process of integration. That is one stage of integration. And the final stage, if you get that far, and not all systems do. In fact, from what I've read online from sites like NAMI and the Sidran Institute, most don't, or at least not completely. I've read a couple of books, including this one here, and he had 11 people in his system, I think, at one point, and by the end of the book, in his final stage, they have 3. They've managed to get their system down to 3 people. It worked really well for them. So as this process continues, you get more of the front seat, and then you start this co-aware thing, which is kind of like both being in the driver's seat. It's kind of like Steven Universe had a sort of melding of 2 people for Garnet, I think his character. And, of course, Steven himself at one point with his friend Connie. You see this kind of thing, like the mind meld kind of thing, where the people are both together in one mind, in the one body. That's kind of what the fusion, I call that fusion. That is a final integration or a full integration. And it doesn't destroy either part. And this is the one thing that's scary at first. This is why I said integration can be scary at sometimes. When I first started going to the doctor about, he started about integration and being very singular, being one person, immediately a panic set in amongst everybody. Because that was like, wait, I don't want to go away. I don't want to be, I don't want to not exist. And that's not what integration does. What it does is bring these pieces together in a more singular-like sense, and they have shared access to memories and experiences. They both, if it's 2 or 3 people, they both or they all will see, feel, hear, touch, etc. the same things. They'll have the same shared experience. They'll have their own perception of it maybe, but it'll be so unified and singular that it won't feel like you're several people doing different things all at once. That internal communication, instead of being like a little voice you hear, like when you hear Pixie chime in periodically, it won't be so much as a voice, it'll just be part of the thought process and understood as part of the same person as you are, while still uniquely not you. And ultimately, that's the best that you can hope for in dissociation like this. The best you can hope for is integration, particularly to an extreme where all parts are together. And I call that a final fusion. The reason why I call that fusion is because you can be highly integrated, where you have great awareness, where everybody can be co-aware of what's going on all the time, and be able to communicate with each other, but yet still distinctly each other, and not that final step where person 1 and person 2 are operating at the same time. One can be in total executive control, everyone else will be aware of it and be able to communicate and see what's going on. That's not the same thing as the 2 people being co-aware and co-controlling, as if they both were in control at the same time. I like to use the Power Rangers thing as a good example. Individually, they're all in their own little robots doing their thing, but when they come together, they're all in the one. It shows them all in the one command center. They all control. They're all co-aware, but they're all also controlling the entire thing. That's kind of what fusion's like. And I use the term fusion there because it tends to get confused with integration a lot, as if that's the only explanation of it. And integration is pretty much is a spectrum. You can be highly integrated or very, very, very little integration to none at all. And fusion is the extreme high end of that. For a lot of people, that is their goal, to either like these guys did, down to as few as possible, for management's sake, which is, I understand why. There's a lot of benefits to that. You have a lot less confusion, you have a lot more cohesiveness, a lot more awareness. There's a lot of really good compelling reasons to do that. But how far you go with that depends entirely on you and your system. For us right now, we've decided we're not pushing for a final fusion. It's not our goal. We're not driving towards that. We're not working towards that. We do want a lot of integration. We are working for better integration. And what that means for us is we want to get to the point, ideally, where we're all co-aware, so that we can all communicate seamlessly, easily, no matter who's out and who's in charge, no matter who's controlling the body at that time. And where if Pixie or Angel or somebody were out, or Caleb or Kitten, whomever, was out and doing something, I would see everything that's going on, so that when I came back out, someone said to me, I wouldn't be thinking, wait, what? Or having to wait for someone to tell me what was said. I would just simply know because I watched it, like watching a movie. I would be like a passenger riding along in the car, just taking notes, basically. If along the way that this happens, and we get closer and closer, and it just happens to lead towards fusions, where some parts kind of merge together and become more singular-like, we'll deal with that. We're okay with that. It is not our goal. I don't know that we'll ever get there. It's a hard thing to do. It takes many, many, many years. I've seen some cases where it can, for the final fusion, the last few pieces of it to all work together, can take 10, 15 years, 20 years in some cases. Most systems, again, from what I read earlier, mentioned the Sidran and Nami, I think were 2 sites I looked at, neither of them say anything about the majority of people making it that far. Most tend not to. They'll have some level of dissociation left. Robert Oxum here. I love his book, by the way, if you've ever Fractured Mind, if you get a chance to look at it, it's really, really good. It's his system's journey from discovery to throughout this process, and each of the different alters that are involved in it get talked about, and they discuss how they did some of the things. Not well enough for sometimes, not as much as I would really like, but that's a process that's very different per system. I would love to say, here's how you integrate. Here's what you do with this part and this part. Here's how, this is a roadmap to it. But I can't. It's different for every system. Some system, like for example his, is one of the ones that very early on, I mean within like weeks or months of them knowing about it, his doctor could say, I need to talk to Bobby. Not Robert, Bobby. It's different, 2 different alters. And bam, it just happened. They just come out. We can't do that. We don't have that level of integration. We do have some positive triggers we can use. We've discovered that by accident. Pixie came out one day when there was some music playing in a pizza place we were in, completely by random shit. We had no idea that could happen. And so we managed to actually use that later on, both testing it and trying to get, like, Angel specifically one time, trying to get him to talk to the doctor. We specifically played some of his music on our phone. We got to the doctor's office early, had time to sit around, and that was one of the things I did. Pixie and I talked about before, saying, hey, we're going to try, we need to get Angel out for this. He said he's willing to talk to the doctor, but we don't know how to control that. He did not wake up for us that morning. Some mornings it's not me that wakes up. I am the host. Most mornings it is, but it's not always. I mean, I'm the one that's out most, but I'm not out all the time. That's just part of the deal. So what we did was we put on some of his music. His favorite band is Disturbed. He's got a playlist with a lot of that on there. So we started playing that. And we just kind of sat back, kind of, not really closed our eyes, but just kind of kept minimal awareness of what was going on and just waited. And it worked. That day it actually worked. It managed to pull Angel out, and he was able to talk to the doctor finally. And since he's done that a handful of times, it's actually gotten a little easier. But that's part of the process. It's practicing it, getting that communication. He's writing a lot more. He's a lot more expressive. He's talked to the doctor several times. He's drawing a lot again, finally. So all these little expressive things, being more aware of us and making us more of him and aware of what he's thinking and doing, it's helping build those connections and break those barriers down between us. And that's the only roadmap you can have for this. Integration is a really weird process. It's a very awkward process. It's essentially trying to help the brain learn to do what it should have done naturally if it weren't for these really terrifying, traumatic things that kept it from happening. And like I said, the end goal for a lot of systems is fusion to some degree, and where two or more parts become one. Some want to go all the way to being a single, very singular, like final fusion. And I think Jess Multiplicity Me has recently said that's now their goal. That's what they're working on. And for anyone that does, I wish you the best of luck. It's going to be very hard. But with a good system and who's got great communication and cooperation, that's not be impossible. For us, that's not our goal, but that's what it is. I would love to give you more information about what this is. It's just really hard to contextualize it for people who don't have dissociation, particularly who don't have the other personalities to work with. But I hope this has helped answer a few of the questions and kind of give you a sense of what it is and how the process from being completely cut off from everything to no integration to highly integrated looks, and what fusion looks like. Fusion, the best thing it says, mostly like a normal person. Highly integrated is kind of teamwork together, like the robots and all being connected in Power Rangers, and the minimal being having no awareness of each other at all. That's any range between is possible. Some people sit on one spot and then suddenly have a whole bunch of progress, others don't. But I hope that answers some questions, and hopefully this is helpful to somebody. We hope our goal is hopefully raise awareness and just trying to make things a little bit clearer for people looking into this the way we were, because there's not a lot of information out there. Thankfully, there's more and more coming out. There's some great systems out there now. I reference Multiplicity Me a lot. Entropy System was the one who first got us to do anything online, which is great because they broke that ice for us, and I'm really grateful for them for doing that. And there's several other really great systems. I can put some in the description for people to check out. There's a lot of great resources finally, and I'm hoping to add to that, just be simply another voice for another perspective, because somebody might need it. Most systems tend to be female-bodied. There's some of us, about 1 in 10, that are male-bodied, and there's not much representation for us. That's why I'm here, and I'm hoping maybe we can, kind of help others along this process and understanding what we didn't. If any of you are a system and you're curious about integration and you're scared of it, please know that's not the terrifying thing that's built up to be. That took months for us to get that through our heads, for us all to understand that. And those few months were really, really tough for us. It was a lot of back and forth time, a lot of animosity between each other. There was a lot of fighting. There's a lot of distractions from trying to work with a doctor because of it. It is not the terrible thing that it sounds like. And being more integrated is a wonderful thing, and it does not destroy the individual of each alter and each part. You can all be tightly integrated and be cooperative without losing who you are. And that's something very, very important to know. So I hope that helps, especially for systems in that position like we were. I hope that helps you. For people who may be loved ones, help that process. Help the others be more familiar with you and with things around you, because that's for the benefit of the person, your friend or loved one. That's something that's really, really difficult from their side as well. I understand it's got to be hard from the other side. I mean, I'm not on that other side, so I can't know it personally, but it's a really difficult thing for a person to have to contend with, knowing that their friend or lover or whomever is many different people, but keep in mind those all are one person in a whole. It's all in different pieces, but it's all one person. And we all deserve to have that kind of love, respect, and relationship. And that process is only helped when you're supportive and caring towards them. We hope that everyone can make that step. If you're a friend of someone that does, be supportive. Help their ask get to know some of the others. Try to make them more comfortable. Try to help your friend, in this process, because ultimately it's for their own good. Well, it's been about 20 minutes, a little bit longer than I was hoping to go, so I'm going to stop here. But I hope this gives people things to talk about and think about, and hopefully our next video will be in another 3 weeks or so. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and thank you for watching.